President Trump has expressed renewed optimism about reaching a deal to end the war in Gaza as he prepares for talks with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In a social media post, Truth Social, President Trump said there's a real chance for greatness in the Middle East as he hinted at something special. He also claimed to receive what he called a very good response from Israeli and Arab leaders. Mr. Trump said those Arab leaders had already backed the blueprint. Hamas, though, says it's a distraction from what it called the massacre happening inside Gaza and said it hadn't received any new ceasefire proposal. Prime Minister Netanyahu said the deal is not yet finalised. He's been speaking on Fox News, though, and praised President Trump.
President Trump does what he does because he decides what's in America's best interest. And I've said this often, I don't decide a thing for President Trump. He is the most independent leader, an amazing leader that I've seen in all my years.
That was Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking on Fox News. Let's take you now to Jerusalem and join our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell, who is there for us. Yolande, do we know any details about what is in the proposal at the moment?
Well, nothing has been officially announced, but there are some journalists who claim to have seen at least a draft version of this plan, 21 points. And they're saying basically that the Israeli military offensive would stop immediately once an agreement was reached, that then you would have within 48 hours all of the remaining hostages. There are 48 of them, 20 of whom are still believed to be alive, and they would be returned. The remains of the others would be returned as well. All Hamas weapons would be destroyed as a result of this plan, and that is something that Hamas has previously ruled out without the creation of an independent Palestinian state. And the fighters from Hamas that are committed to what's described as peaceful coexistence would be allowed to stay, and others would be allowed to leave if they chose. No Gazans in general would be forced to leave under this plan. So that is a big departure from what President Trump was talking about way back in February of this year, when he put forward his idea of creating a Riviera coastal resort in Gaza with a US takeover and Palestinians leaving, all 2 million of them. There is supposed to be a Trump economic plan to rebuild and energize, and sort of interim governance where you'd have an overarching international body with the US sort of helping to set that up, and then you would have a Palestinian technocratic committee. According to reports, there is a future role foreseen for a reformed version of the Palestinian Authority, which currently governs parts of the West Bank, and there would be a sort of temporary international stabilization force with Arab countries contributing to that. But this is a framework, and it's understood a lot of the detail is yet to be thrashed out, and we know that there have been these important meetings taking place with the Israeli Prime Minister and members of the White House team in advance of the big meeting at the White House.
And when we hear from President Trump that it's had a good response from Arab leaders, Yolande, is he referring to Egyptian and Qatari mediators? I mean, any word from those parties?
Well, there were generally kind of positive noises after that meeting that President Trump had last Tuesday on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. He said it was his most important meeting of the day when he sat down with them and presented to them his 21-point plan. It's understood that they had some contributions to make as well, that they have been asking for more of a role for Palestinians in the transitional body, that the Qataris want included in this stipulation that Israel will not again attack Qatar as it did earlier this month, when it says it was targeting Hamas leaders, that failed assassination attempt in Qatar earlier this month. And they have been involved in drawing up this plan. It's really not clear what the final version will look like, but it's seen as being something very positive, that already there is now a news conference planned between Mr. Netanyahu and President Trump following their private talks. So it's thought that really wouldn't happen if they didn't have something they were confident that they could announce.
OK, Yolande, stay with us for a moment, because we can also bring in our Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abaloof, who joins us now from Istanbul, for the response, firstly, Rushdie, to all of this that we know from Hamas. But can you put Hamas into context for us at the moment? Who represents them, and are they still a meaningful force?
Well, in the ground, there is a great deal of damage done to Hamas in the last 2 years, especially in the southern part of Gaza, in Khan Yunis and Rafah. Maybe they still have, as they said, as much as 5,000 militants in Gaza. They said they are ready to fight the Israelis and defend the city. The Hamas in Doha, most of the people who were targeted are survived. Some of them were injured, but I think they are still, in charge of the movement. The five committee leaders are in charge of the movement. When I talked to them yesterday about this new Trump, proposal, they said they have not received any official proposal from the mediators, which mean the Qatari and the Egyptian. We understand that today there is an Egyptian security delegation is traveling to Doha, and there are supposed to be some meetings tonight involving the Qataris, the Egyptian, and Hamas to talk about this.
OK, well, we'll wait and see what comes out of that meeting at the White House. We will certainly be right across it and bringing any developments from DC as they happened. As Yolande was saying, they're expecting a press conference and a statement, so we'll know a lot more then. Yolande, Rushdie, do stay with us, because we want to talk now about what's happening on the occupied West Bank. Gaza, not the only Palestinian territory coming under increasing attack and threat of annexation from Israel. Violence by ultranationalist Jewish settlers in the West Bank has risen sharply since the 7th of October 2023. OCHA, which is the UN's humanitarian office, estimates there's an average of 4 settler attacks every day. There's also been an acceleration of the spread of Jewish settlements in the occupied territories, and Israel has drastically restricted now the movement of Palestinians in the West Bank using permanent and temporary checkpoints. According to the UN, 995 Palestinians had been killed by Israelis in the occupied West Bank since October 2023. Of those, 180 Palestinians, including at least 37 children, were killed by Israelis since the beginning of this year alone. So let's show you the area that we're talking about. The West Bank is here on the western bank of the Jordan River and is the larger of the 2 Palestinian territories, the other being the Gaza Strip, of course, that make up the Palestinian territories that now is recognised as the State of Palestine by 156 countries, including the UK. It is bordered by Jordan and by Israel. In the latest restrictions on the movement of Palestinians in the West Bank, Israel has closed the only crossing between the Israeli-occupied West Bank and neighbouring Jordan. Now, that prevents more than 2 million Palestinians from leaving. The plan that President Trump presented Arab and Muslim leaders reportedly does include this promise from Mr. Trump that Israel will not annex the occupied West Bank, which has been of huge concern there. Yolande, can you give us a sense of what daily life is like for many Palestinians who live in the occupied West Bank?
I mean, it does vary, but Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have really experienced higher tensions over the past couple of years and really feel that a lot of their problems have been ignored, while the world's attention has inevitably been focused on what's happening in the Gaza Strip. I mean, in terms of economic distress, the Palestinian Authority governs parts of the West Bank, the main Palestinian towns and cities. And, as part of the agreements from the Oslo Accords, the Israeli government is supposed to pass to the Palestinian Authority tax revenues that it collects on its behalf at the ports, because of course Israel controls the borders, and it has been withholding those, saying that that's because of a system of payments whereby the Palestinian Authority pays out money to those who've carried out attacks on Israelis and their families, prisoners in Israeli jails. The Palestinian Authority, under a lot of pressure over all of this, has been saying since the start of the year that it has reformed that system. It's saying it's now got proof that it's changed its welfare system, and yet still that money is being withheld. And it's really very large sums that the Palestinian Authority relies on to pay for public workers. So you have people who haven't been paid now for a full salary for many months, and they haven't even received last month's salary, some people were telling me just a couple of days ago. I mean, then the situation before this war, you would have tens of thousands of Palestinian labourers going to Israeli settlements, coming to work in Jerusalem and different parts of Israel, and they really relied on those salaries that they could get and take back for the West Bank economy. Nearly all of those permits now have been cancelled by Israel, citing its security concerns. On top of that, you know, some places, I was in Bethlehem last week, people there really rely on tourism. That has also really, you know, been hit hard by the ongoing war, and the West Bank economy is in dire straits. A lot of people sort of really discredit the Palestinian Authority. It continues to cooperate with Israel on matters related to security. So that's why you have a lot of people who don't regard highly some of the Palestinian leaders they have. They feel that, you know, they've made the wrong decisions. There's a lot of corruption, and that they're not effective at, you know, pursuing Palestinian goals. That said, you know, it was a big diplomatic win for the Palestinian Authority. In particular, it has been pushing this idea of countries recognizing an independent Palestinian state, and you do see now big signs up in the West Bank, people thanking, you know, the new countries that have made that step, Western powers, in the past couple of weeks.
Rushdie, the UN says there's an average of about 4 attacks a day taking place within the occupied West Bank, though. Yolande talking about security there and the Palestinian Authority. What is done within the occupied West Bank to try and protect Palestinians from those attacks? Not just them, but their homes and their lands, their farmland as well.
Well, there is a whole debate about the West Bank. Well, for many times Palestinians say, well, if Israel is attacking Gaza because 7th of October, but since 7th of October, they are attacking the West Bank, and there is no attacks from the West Bank. And for those in the West Bank, the people, especially the villagers, who very soon will start the harvest of their olives, and we notice every year there is an increase attacks by Jewish settlers to those farmers, and there is very little Palestinian can do to do this. Sometimes they do try to defend themselves, but they end up, you know, jailed by the Israeli army, who all the time, Palestinians in the West Bank, accusing the army of supporting and protecting the Jewish settlers and do nothing to stop the attacks. About 2 years ago, when I was allowed to go to the West Bank, I have been to many of these villages. Attacks from the settlers. There's very little Palestinian can do for this, and the amount of force that they use, sometimes they burn their cars, they burn their, you know, they cut their trees, they throw stones in them, and, you know, for just like ordinary villagers, there's very little they can do, and the Palestinian Authority is not doing enough, and that's why all the time people are, you know, criticize Palestinian Authority. They say, if you can't protect us from the Jewish settlers, why you are holding, why you are continuing to govern these kind of areas. So very complicated situation, but there is this whole debate about why they are attacking Palestinian in the West Bank. There was no 7th of October there.
Really interesting to talk to both of you, Yolande and Rushdie. Thank you so much. One of the reasons we're discussing it is we've been focusing so much on the UN General Assembly. Gaza has very much been the focus there, but today they are going to be discussing what is happening in the occupied West Bank in a special session this morning. So we'll watch that and bring you into developments as well.